wait and see who can top the times once again. But yeah, doing a good job at the minute, just to follow. He knows what he's doing, is Castian in that number 11 car as we ride on board of him, as you see in the blue and neon yellow livery in that slipstream all the way down to the Ascari section. Once again, bump drafting all the way through, and let's see if he can improve on his time coming up next. But still, Roy Castian, what can he do today? He's setting the benchmark so far in practice. Can he set the benchmark going to qualifying? We'll have to wait and see for that one, as heading wide all the cars in the straight line onto the straight, using that slipstream once again. On the route down to Parabolica, you can see a few cars on their outlaps as well. But this train, interesting to see Kirkman put in another lap time. That's 2 minutes 13.4. Notta puts in a 13.6. And we'll see him coming around Parabolica. See if anybody else can improve and join the people who are flying through the ranks. But Rick Postema coming to the line once again onto the main straight. And is he going to improve on his latest lap? He's still just bump drafting all the way through and stays in P5 with 12.4. And so does Castian at the top of the times, 11.8 for him. So impressive stuff so far, being shown out there over a second up on Postema so far as we head into the first section once again. But Roy Castian, man to watch so far, as we've seen in this practice session. This will be the final lap they have to get everything out there and leave it out on the track. Any sort of mistakes, get it out of your system now before we head into qualifying. But as we ride on board with Justin Van Densen, heading round Curva Grande, he's currently sat in P5 in that number 7 car and sat in that slipstream. You can see through the angle of the cockpit there as he heads into the Della Voggia chicane. As getting a bit scrappy with these guys. And going down the inside there, bit of fighting in practice there, and actually been pushed off a bit wide into the gravel trap. As so far, still side by side as we head round the Lesmo corners. As we have the replay here, going very wide into the gravel is Marco Kirkman as he heads onto the Sigillo straight. But well, you can see some interesting lines being taken, but that's not going to be the optimal one in this practice session. There is Yuri heading wide. That's a big spin into the gravel and just hitting the what's a big impact. As that is far from ideal for the number 18 car, but at least it's only in practice. But that's a huge collision heading onto a Sigillo straight and on the exit of Lesmo 2 at turn 7. That is far from ideal, as qualifying is now underway. So hopefully he's got all the incidents out of his way. But that was a huge collision, only in practice though. But here we go, cars coming out of the pit lane as the track goes green for some qualifying action for the first round of the NXTGP iRacing Mazda MX-5 Cup, as we'll see the use of the bump drafting all the way down the straights and mostly throughout the lap, as that will be the optimal line if you're in the mix. But it's all about getting a clean lap in as well. That's a big spin in behind. I'm not sure who that was, but literally coming into the first chicane, that's already a huge mistake and might just cost them of getting decent lapping so far. So might have to reset there. But we're right on board with Marco Kirkman, who's in the mix in that number 17 car, as we'll see what he can do on his outlap. He needs to get those tyres nice and warmed up before he heads around for his first lap of the 5.8 kilometre iconic Monza circuit. And still going side by side, a few drivers there as we head into the Della Voggia chicane, fighting for position out there. But on board with is he going to try and make a move also into turn 6 at the first Lesmo? All sorts of moves being made as we head into the first main laps of qualifying. Everyone on the outlap so far, but look at the fighting for track position and to get through and try and get the optimal slipstream-like line. But as we head on the route down Ascari section once again, let's see if anyone's going to make a move, try and get themselves further up the ranks. But obviously drivers wanting to be in that slipstream and bump drafting each other all the way through. But you can see how busy it is and how crowded it is as we go down to the Sky section, still side by side most of these drivers. As Hayno found a nice clean gap, as Haynen also in behind and just watching these two fight ahead as it's Kirkman on the outside. A bit of collision there between Marco Kirkman and the other Mazda there. I'm not sure which car that was. I think it was the number 34 car. But interesting stuff there on the outlap only. Hopefully no damage between the pair, but you can see everyone squabbling for track position, trying to get in that slipstream. But we're heading to Parabolica as we get the first laps underway. I think that was Ardigo who did make a bit of contact, as it was a silver, I think it was a number 34 car again, just ahead of him, and he might have just made a bit of contact with the rear, but you can see him bum draft all the way to turn number 1 and the first chicane, as that orange and black car also going for a move. So we see him going 3 wide as we head into turn number 1. But who's going to come out on top here? 3 does not go into 1 now, I'll tell you that. We've seen that on many occasions in real racing, but still, it's going side by side into turn number 1. Ardigo just seeing and chilling in behind, watching these guys go ahead. He has to brake a little bit early as well, but still side by side ahead. And it's the orange and white car ahead who makes it ahead out of that 3 wide situation. But wow, seeing some absolute ferocious moves so far in qualifying only, as it's all the battle to get the best slipstream and the best line all the way through it. But so far, see 2 drivers going side by side up ahead as well into the Della Voggia chicane. As going to the Della Voggia chicane, this big group of drivers making contact with the rear there as they bump draft each other all the way around Curva Grande and up to the Della Voggia chicane like we see. But Ardigo might have found a bit of a nicer gap than the cars ahead of him. However, might be held up as well by these guys going side by side. So we'll see what his lap time is when he crosses the line in the next few sectors or so. But now into Lesmo number 2, as gets turned in nice and early. Car nearly parked on the apex there. That wouldn't have been far from ideal for his racing lap and his time. But as we head on the route down to the Ascari section, as Ardigo getting that slipstream once again as we ride on board with Castian, as he's heading into the Ascari, as he's heading into the Lesmos. As let's see what he can do. It's a 45.4 in sector 1 and into the right-hander of Lesmo 1, and gets on the power once again, as he doesn't have a slipstream this time around. But in sector 2 it's a 20.6 for Roy Castian, and let's see where he can get himself in qualifying, as he looks pretty good in practice. Can he match it in qualifying, the all-important first qualifying of the season, as he's getting a nice tow as the car behind him, pulling side by side and pulling ahead before he gets to the Ascari section, as he's now getting a nice slipstream all the way down to Parabolica and maybe to the line as well. But so far Castian 23.0 in sector 3 and pulling out from that slipstream once again, otherwise he might catch him a bit too much. But so far, we'll see what the first lap time is. Sant goes to the top of the time. It's a 20.466, or 20.966, who sets the benchmark so far. Still a bit slower than the practice session, so we'll see everyone get wired in and close up to the top of the times, but it's a decent lap time. As Cruson, 2 minute 15.169, goes into P5, as we'll see Castian what he's going to do when he comes to line. Is he going to be further up there? It's going to be into P5 only. Prostema puts it at 12.183 and puts it on provisional pole. Still 10 minutes left to go in qualifying, and it's a decent lap from Roy Prostema in the number 238 Mazda, but Wanton puts it 2 minute 13.2. He goes into P3, as you see his massive train once again, including Heynen, who actually made a few collisions on the early outlaps, but heading around the Lesmo corners into Lesmo 1. You can see the car ahead of him already scuffed up from all the racing action, but so far the number 34 car looking unscathed. But out ahead, Prostema setting the early benchmark to stand in behind, and Wanton in P3, but Weingarten also in P4, and he's not doing a bad job at all. But Heynen, sector 1 it's a 45.0, sector 2 it's a 20.9, in sector 3 it's a 22.636, and they're all green so far. So let's see when it comes to line where he can put himself, as this could be an all-important lap. You never know what's going to happen for the rest of qualifying, but he's got a lovely little gap here with a slipstream ahead of him as he heads into the Parabolica section. But Gabriel Ardigo right ahead of him as well, as his car looking very scuffed up in this train as well. Must have made a bit of contact early on, which we saw on his outlap. But yeah, don't want to get too much, can affect the front suspension. But Twine, he's also coming across the line now in sector 4, did 24.6, and coming across the line he is gonna do a 19.8, and it's a pretty decent lap to be honest for Twine in the 100 car. But so far out front, Heynen puts in a 12.153, and it's a pretty good lap from himself as ran on board with Cole as he's going into the gravel, and that's not ideal. Into the Ascari section, straight lining it pretty much, as that is far from ideal. Obviously going to affect the tyres and heading across the gravel, as that will be an absolute invalid lap. But Krahenveld, he's also going wide there, seeing him struggle into Lesmo. One slightly wide there, and yeah, must have went a bit too late into the braking zone. So far from my nose, there's another car going deep into Lesmo, so struggling is Notta this time around. As yeah, one in the Ascari section, but the Lesmo corners seeming most difficult, as we saw in practice as well. A car going into the barriers, but Notta, yeah, non-ideal for him. Needs to get a lap in, and now quite far away from the cars in front to get an ideal slipstream, but yeah, going very deep there. That is far from ideal as we ride on back on board with Melvin Twine. As in Sector 1, a 46.361, and in Sector 2, a 21.4. Needs to get a lap in now to try and challenge for the top 10, but there's a car parked earlier on, just out of Lesmo section, heading back into the pits. But that might have affected some of their laps in behind. But this train sticking very nicely together, I've got to be said. Not much contact being made as we've got a car down for the inside line, and that might just affect Twine's time, but still no, makes it out ahead with the outside line, but taking a lot of curb there, and the car bouncing over the rumble strips and goes wide as an impact of that into the gravel trap, as you don't see many there, but yeah, it goes very deep into turn number 9 at the Ascari section, as that very much compromised the exit and into the gravel. I don't think that'll be an invalid, I think that'll be an invalid lap anyway. But in Sector 4, 24.578 as he comes across the line. Is it going to be valid, and where's it going to put Melvin Twine, the number 83 car, as he heads onto the power right out of exit of Parabolica into the slipstream once again, and coming across the line, tightest lines he possibly can, and so line it goes. It's a 19.542 in the final sector, and I don't think it was a valid lap once again, as he doesn't get that time on the board. But still, cars out there. Heyman still at the top of the times, and Prostema in P2. So they're the early benchmark as into the first chicane, going very deep there, and oh, that's going to very much compromise the exit. Go for a bit of a switchback is Heyman in the number 69 car, but Twine going very deep into turn number 1. Kryson into P11 with a 2 minutes 13.3, and Cole gets only a 2 minute 28.3 and stays at the back of the time setters so far, but heading side by side around Curva Grande and on the exit on the route down to De La Roja chicane and into the braking zone once again. We're right on board with Melvin Twine as he flying into the section. It was a pretty nice entry there, to be honest. In behind, I'm pretty sure, the number 69 car there. And yeah, once again, heading into Lesmo's. We've seen many drivers make mistakes here into Lesmo 1, and that can cost you in the gravel. And Lesmo 2, big barrier if you skid across the gravel there, as we ran on board with Hainu there. He's going back to the pit lane. There's Cole. He's also sat in P15 so far. Has got a time on the board, but it's far from ideal and needs to get another one in, as that's a car in the grass on the inside line there. That might just affect some of the drivers there, with all the marbles being kicked up there. But so far, Cole, it's a 46.0 and a 20.9. So he goes green in Sector 2 as he heads around the final Lesmo and onto the route, the long route down to the Ascari section. Got a bit of a slipstream from the car head, but needs to be a lot closer to feel the benefit. And that's from the red car in front. But heading to the Ascari section, needs it clean to get a decent lap in. But in Sector 3, it's a 22.943. As looked a pretty decent line actually through the Ascari section so far. And out of the final turn 10 corner. Probably could have pushed it a bit more as we've got cars ahead, braking all over the place. And that might just affect his line. And has to compromise that as well, as he wants that slipstream and that bump draft all the way down to turn 1. There's his two cars out, it's the green and the blue Mazda there on the inside line, having to avoid them as we're heading to Parabolica. But I don't think Wells going to set any competitive time on this lap, that's for sure. But yeah, riding on board, needs to get a better lap in the number 29 car. But Franson is the man on provisional pole at the moment in the number 19 car. He's done a pretty decent job. Ardigo, we've seen him with a pretty battered car in the number 69 car, but he's been in that pack all qualifying long and currently sits in P5. Doing a decent job so far. So yeah, I'll see how he does on his latest lap. but so far doing a pretty decent job in P5. Can he challenge further up the grid? But we've still only got 3 minutes left in qualifying. It's Franson setting the benchmark, and is anybody else going to be able to get above him in the last stages and set a better lap time? But it's pretty decent from Franson so far, and it's going to be tricky to get. But yeah, let's see how Ardigo can do. He's now at the front of the pack though, so might be compromised in terms of getting that slipstream, as Roel van der Sant, he's currently in P6 and he's right in the midst of this pack as well. As you see the number 13 car diving to the inside at the Della Roger chicane. Oh, going very deep there and actually going well off the track into the Della Roger chicane, and that's definitely going to compromise his next run, and might only just have 1 run left in qualifying when he comes to final. I was in the behind, flying over the Della Roger chicane on the curb. Flew well over that, got a lot of airtime, as that was the blue and gold car right in behind. But Van der Sant so far had a pretty clean run. He's going to get a nice exit speed with that toe as well on the run down to the Ascari section, as in sector 1 and 2 improving so far. But on this next lap, can he improve and get further ahead of these cars behind and put himself with a shot over top 5 position? Franson and Prost Damon now finish their qualifying runs, staying in the pit lane and give everything they have got. But Franson done a very good job so far in qualifying compared to his practice pace, and so far setting the benchmark. Can anybody else even get close? But to ride on board with Van der Sant as he comes down to Parabolica, as I think he might have just given up on his lap, slowing down and letting everybody else through, so maybe just preparing himself for one final lap as he comes around Parabolica for the final time in qualifying. But 14 out of the 15 now done, as Ardigo yet again on another lap, as Melvin Twine also on another lap, as you see a car go well off in turn 1 and into the runoff. And right past the cones, that's a car spin as well, just at turn 2 as well. But to ride on board with Weingarten, as is that another car going wide in terms of that at Lesmo 2? I don't think it is, but it's still not the gravel trap, but still very wide there. So yeah, far from ideal for Weingarten, as he ran on board with Notta, going wide a bit at Lesmo 1. Let's see him into Lesmo 2. And what is the line like through there? But yeah, not far from ideal there. But Roy Caston, he was setting the bench. Oh, he's cutting the full gravel, and that's what we saw. It was Roy Caston going well over the curb there, just straight lined the Della Roger chicane, and that was the man setting the benchmark in the practice session. Yeah, far from ideal there. But 15 minutes now up in qualifying, as it's the drivers setting their final lap times. As it's Franson who grabs pole position at round 1 of the NXTGP. And let's see if he can do that in the race as well. But very impressive stuff, and that's where he wants to be. As there to go, Connor Franson grabs pole position. Milan Tikens in P2. It's Cass Haynen who grabs P3 and Rick Prostema in P4. Roy Castian takes P5 after his good lap in practice, but a 10th.5 off the pace here in qualifying, as it's Weingarten who takes P6. Gabriel Ardigo takes P7. Roel van Sant takes P8. Kirkman takes P9, Wessel Wanton in P10, Yuri Verswijneren in P11, Luna DeWitt takes P12, but yeah, Roy Castian probably wanted to be higher up after a good practice session as well, got to keep that in mind. But it's Gene Powery in P13, O Van Kruisen in P14, and in P15 Justin Van Densen takes that one, and Bast Notter in P16 only. Cole takes P17, Heino in P18. He was in the pack all time long, so maybe he didn't get a clean lap in there. Cry Van Velde in P19. Melvin Twine, we saw him having a lot of scrap darts and didn't actually set one in the end in P20. As yeah, far from ideal for me, as it's Backer in P21 and rounds out the pack. But yeah, far from ideal for Backer and Twine, both not able to set valid lap times there. But Franson, huge lap from him, exactly where he wants to be at the top. But we're going to see a highly competitive race, and I'm sure some even more dramatic action as we get ready for a fantastic race here at Monza in Heat 1 as the first round of the NXTGP Mazda MX-5 Cup. As who's going to take it? As the lights lighting up one more time, and for the first time this season, it's Franson who leads the way to Tikens in P2 and Hayden in P3. Who's got a good start? It's Franson, who gets away fantastically to Teekens, who's slotted in behind and taking that bump draft all the way up to turn number 1. Can he take it? Can he try and opt for a dive down to the inside? But here, opting for the outside line, Franson defending that inside line as the black and gold car defending nicely, but goes a bit too deep, takes a lot of curb on the exit as he heads on the route round Curva Grande, goes a bit into the gravel as well. Teekens in P2 as in behind going side by side. That's Sant and Ardigo already getting his elbows out and trying to bring up some places from P8 on the grid. But Franson gets a fantastic start ahead of Teekens as we headed round Curva Grande and into the Della Voglia chicane. Melvin Twine, he's got to make up plenty of positions after poor qualifying, but Teekens getting the move done on Franson as we head into the Della Voglia chicane, dive into the inside line. I think that's Sant on Weingarten. Franson getting the move back on the exit of Della Voglia chicane, heading into Lesmo 1, and Ardigo still going side by side. Plenty of racing action as that's a car absolutely beach. I think that's Bakker. Oh no, it's Heino and Coel who's out of the Grand Prix, but still side by side is Weingarten, Sant, Ardigo, all fighting round the Lesmos. Weingarten down the inside, he gets into P6, and round the outside is a number 69 car of Gabriel Ardigo. He's still getting his elbows out as well, but in P6 it's Weingarten who takes it so far, as the number 18 car still going side by side on the route down to the Scary section. As Witt, he's also making a move as Verswijveren, he's finally got into P6 as well. Very competitive in the midfield pack. Oh, yeah, that's a bit of a collision between Ardigo and Sant as well as we head into the Ascari section. Prostema and Castian fighting for positions, and that's all for P4 as well. But Kirkman, he's also made up a place on Denson, but Marco Kirkman is now right on the back of Witt as Sant makes another move on Weingarten. Weingarten was up in P6 at one point, now dropping down to P8, but now so far still going side by side and finds this one. Sant and Ardigo fighting for positions as well. Sant going down the inside, Kirkman also getting into P10. It's still 3 wide as we head onto the main straight once again on the route down to Retafilo chicane. This is highly competitive so far. Look at the cars as Franson, Heinen, Teekens all get a fantastic start. Prostema and Cassian also out of this train as well. Verswijveren, the leader of this pack so far, 5.3 seconds off the leaders already. But Ardigo, Kirkman, Weingarten, Verswijveren all still fighting side by side as we head into the first chicane. That's a big spin and that's a big crash, and I think that's Ardigo, Gabriel Ardigo, who's going to be out of this race, dropping positions. That is absolute not ideal as we head into the first chicane. That's disaster for Ardigo, who is making up good positions after the race start. But now Weingarten right on the back, because we're going to see a replay going off, and that's 2 cars, not just 1, it's 2, and going into the runoff as well. What a big collision there, and that's a rear end, absolutely disastrous for Ardigo, and into the grass is, I'm not sure what car that was as well, but that's 2 cars out, and it's Ardigo, Wanton, Coel, our first 3 drivers out of this race and into the pits. Teekens, Franson still doing a fantastic job at the top. Heinen also making it to Franson, dropping positions and dropping to the back of the pack. But Teekens running a fantastic race so far from P2, already into this race lead, but Franson dropping to the back of the pack and opting to get that slipstream on the route down to the Ascari section. But so far, it's been ideal for Teekens, Heinen, Castian, Prostema and Franson, all 5 gapping the cars behind. And there's that 2 train separation already as we head into Ascari section. On lap 2, as Teekens and Heinen, they're sure they're going to squabble once again, as that's a lovely Riverwood car with a cookie on it. As Teekens, but in behind, we're going to see that highly competitive midfield pack. But what a huge crash between Ardigo and Bakker in the early stages. Sant coming out of the pit lane as well, or out of the Grand Prix, sorry. Teekens, as going to the inside line, is Franson on Prostema into Parabolica. It's very tricky to make a move around here. Stick to the inside line, as Franson might have just got that one done, you know, with the better line and the better traction there. So nice move from Franson, our pole sitter. As Kriveld also trying to make a move on Kirken. They're still going side by side. It's going to be a long run all the way down to the Retifilo section, as taking the slipstream will be ever so important. That's going to be a slipstream of Weingarten ahead, but setting the purple lap so far, it's a 12.9, and that's from Twine, who sets the benchmark so far and wants to get to the front of that pack, as Franson getting ahead of Heinen once again. But these guys still side by side. Kriveld trying to get this one, make this one stick as we head into the braking zone. He's got that inside line, and yeah, Kirkman just can't hold it around the outside lane, but still going off into the gravel lane. A bit of contact made on the exit. as Kriveld still etches out in front of Kirkman as we head around Curva Grande once again, but still going to the inside line surely when he pulls out from the slipstream. De La Roja chicane, there's another overtaking opportunity for Kirkman as Pino Kriveld wants to keep him behind once again, still side by side, and the inside line this time is going to Kirkman. He's still going side by side now, we're a long way round the outside. Kriveld making this one stick. It's a fantastic defensive move from Kirkman as Densman also trying to make the move. He's opting to go to the inside line. He's got past Kirkman, he's got past Kriveld, or has he? I don't think he has. Kriveld just staying ahead around the Lesmo corners, but we run back to the front as Teekens 2/10 clear of Franson, who's got that slipstream. Franson made up positions on Heynen, Cassian and Prostema on the latest lap, but still opting behind, bump drafting Teekens ahead. And let's see if he can make a move into the Ascari section. No, I think he's just going to stay behind and wait for that long slipstream and the long bump draft all the way down to Parabolica, or maybe even the Retifilo chicane. Wanton, he's making moves up the pack of Sant and Ardigo in the pit lane. Sant is out of the Grand Prix, I'm pretty sure. But Franson going for the inside line, pulling out of the slipstream, maybe just going to hold back into Parabolica, or is he going to go for a move once again? As yeah, just having to stay behind as he'll have that long run down to the Retifilo chicane, and he's going to have another chance to move, I'm pretty sure of that, as he's got that bump drafting and that slipstream, as that's also important. This top five getting away and breaking away very well from Verswijveren and Weingarten, who are leading the second pack as the fastest lap of the Grand Prix goes to Franson. It's a 12.7 so far, and he's setting good pace on lap 4. He's heading for that inside line. He's going to opt for the race lead as well. But I tell you what, Heynen also going for it. But the inside line, it is Franson. You can just see on the right of your screen as Castian in behind. See, no, it's action. No, that's a huge crash. That's not just Prostema. It's Franson and Heynen all having a huge crash at turn number 2 at the Retifilo chicane. That is not ideal for them, who has led a very nice race at the front and was going for a move for that race lead, and now getting overtaken from Verswijveren and Weingarten. We're going to see a replay here as we come into the Retifilo chicane. But Heynen riding on board, he's got that outside line as going to the inside. Does he just tap the rears? As it's the car ahead who taps the rears, or maybe just loses the rears. I don't think he even got touched there, but has a huge spin at turn number 2, and that makes a big collision. As we see Conor Ranson's POV as we head into turn number 1. He's got that outside line as he does just touch the number 19 car, as that caused him into a spin. So yeah, Conor Franson, not ideal, as that's caused a huge crash there, but just gets hit on the rears, and that caused him into a spin. Teekens and Castian now been able to be 1.2 seconds clear of Prostema and Verswijveren, but Prostema did get caught in all that. Did he get any damage from it? I'm not so sure. We're going to see later on, but it seemed pretty nice through this lap and catching up slightly. You can see the front right of that car with a fair bit of damage, but action galore in the first 4 laps. Teekens from P2 into P1 so far. Castian right in behind and ready to fight for this one as well. But Prostema also in that collision, but still got a chance of fighting at the top. Verswijveren been up there consistent so far in this race. The first 4 laps been out of all sorts of trouble and got himself up to P4, and Weingarten rounds out the top 5, and Franson after that collision with Heynen down in P6 and P7. As Melvin Twine in P8 after a good start from him after starting from quite far down, not getting a successful lapping in qualifying. Kriveld, we've seen him battling with Denson and Kirkman as they're the battle for P9, 10 and 11. But we look back to the front, and Teekens and Castian closing up to each other once again. Castian in that slipstream, bump drafting all the way down to the Retifilo chicane as he's going to pull to the inside line, try and make this move. Hopefully no collision for these guys at the top. 2:16.0 setting so far as we're getting just settled into this Grand Prix in Monza, but still not going for a move this time around. Is in behind. These guys just bump drafting as well. I think that was Heynen on Franson once again as right on board with Melvin Twine. As in behind, you can see Kriveld and Denton as these guys go a bit off the track as well into the gravel. Doesn't really affect their exit though, but Kirkman and Kriveld in behind still going side by side. That's a huge fight. Kriveld and Notter. Notter's also just made his way through as well. But Verswijveren, he's going to want to keep Weingarten behind. Weingarten been threatening all race long as Castian. He's making the move into the De La Roja chicane. and gets into that race lead. Nice job from Castian into the Delaroche chicane, but I'm sure we're going to see a switch soon enough when he gets in that slipstream and bump drafting once again. Denson and Notta still going side by side in behind in that second pack as well into the Delaroche chicane, but it's all sorts of dramas. Verswijnveren once again in behind ahead of Weingarten, who's wanting to get through. He's knocking on the door as we ride on board of him, but in sector 1, Prostema about a 10th down on Verswijnveren in sector 2, improving and keeping that P3 so far. So that's just keeping Verswijnveren at bay, as he kind of needs to be in that bump drafting zone of Prostema, who's now trying to close in on Tikens and Castian. But yeah, let's see what Verswijnveren can do. But in sector 2, looks pretty strong, did Prostema. But in sector 3, trying to claw in that time is Verswijnveren. And once again, we see as that's Fransen's car with huge damage on the front, still trying to keep in the mix and right behind Weingarten, about 4 tenths behind. But so far, Castian under pressure once again from Tikens as we're heading to Parabolica. These guys still bump drafting all the way down to Conor Fransen. Here's a look at the damage on the front of that car. It's far from ideal for him, but yeah, setting the benchmark, and let's see what he can do later on in the Grand Prix. And can he get that repaired on the front of the Mazda? He's coming into the pit lane now, just speaking about it, and let's see what his pit stop time will be and where he comes out on the track. But Fransen needing that front right car repaired definitely, is after that huge collision at the first chicane. But Castian under pressure from Tikens into the first chicane as Prostema sets the fastest lap of the race so far. Prostema going to the inside line of not just Tikens, he gets past Castian as well. Into the race lead goes Prostema, as it's a good move from Rick Prostema, who gets through. He had a purple sector 2, and that might have just landed, because you know that's a huge crash in behind, as I think that's Kriveld, Denson and Notta all having a huge crash at turn 1 and 2. But we'll see the replay once again. Denson will run aboard with him, and we'll see what he does, and that that sets a spin already from the car behind, goes sideways, and that's a huge crash. Denson just caught lacking there. That's not much he could have done about it in turn number 2. But that's a huge crash. We ran on board with Kriveld in the Tech Orange car, as he just gets rear-ended, as that just caused him into a huge spin at turn 1. That's a huge collision, and that might just cause them to drop back positions and have no contention of the top 6, which they would have been fighting for without that collision. But Kriveld well and truly hit there into turn 1. That's caused a huge collision there. Rick Prostema, though, rather back on board with him as he's keeping Tikens behind. We've seen a lot of big collisions so far at the first chicane, and also the Lesmos as well, like in qualifying as well. Cars going wide, but so far Sant, the man out of this Grand Prix. Coel still in it, a lap down though, but at the moment we'll look for Kirkman as well, as he I'm pretty sure was involved in that incident. But Tikens, Prostema, Castian and Verswijnveren all still closing in. Verswijnveren had a better lap last time around to close in, but yeah, still in the mix and pretty much neck and neck to Verswijnveren, who was very good in sector 1 on the latest lap, and that just caused him to close into Castian once again. So coming around Parabolica, who's going to be opting to making moves as this pack from P1 all the way down to P5. Weingarten at the back of it, Tikens at the top of it, and Prostema going side by side already, as Castian making a move on Prostema, Verswijnveren making a move on Prostema, as heading to the back of the pack is Prostema, letting everybody through, so he has a slipstream on the next lap. But heading to the inside line, I'm pretty sure that's Verswijnveren and in that Benelux. But let's see as he heads to the inside line once again, and the Castian gets through once again. Nice move from Castian into the first chicane, as Tikens stays in P2. Weingarten takes P3, Verswijnveren in P4, and Prostema back down to P5 and resets to the back of the pack. But nice job so far from Castian to get back in that race lead. He was very quick in practice, didn't quite get a good lap in qualifying like we thought he should. But in the race, already in that race lead. But Tikens heading down to the inside line into the Delaroche chicane and gets into the race lead once again. Tikens looking very good in this race so far, it's got to be said. He's managed it very well, not got involved in any sort of incidents. But it's heading to the gravel air fuel cars, as in behind you can see Hayden's car, as that's got a lot of front end damage, as you ride on board with Kruysen in P8 and Notta in P9, as in sector 1 Kruysen dropping 2 tenths back, so might be under pressure from Notta in this next 2 sections, as we head out of Les Modes once again. But Teekens doing a pretty good job on this lap and gaining in the first few sectors, but still we'll see in this next sector if he can get through into the Ascari section. No, he's going to stay behind once again, but so far it's just swapping positions as at the back of this pack. Prostema, he's dropped back a bit as well, so we'll see if he can try and make a move as we head out of Parabolica once again, but still heading in that bump draft and on the route down to Parabolica. Is anyone going to go for a move there? We've seen a few moves already into Parabolica as you see the cars behind. That's the second pack there, and I'm pretty sure that is Heynen, Twine, and Cruson, Notter, Burke and Kirkman all the way down to P10 as they're fighting for the little points. But at the top, Teekens, Cassian, Weingarten, Vers Weinveren, Prostema all still fighting for this one as we head onto the main straight once again and down to turn number 1. Who's going to take it and who's going to opt to go for a move? Prostema on the last lap just took himself to the back of the pack on this lap. Can he try and make a move into the Retifilo chicane? As in front, I'm pretty sure that is Castian heading to the inside line. Still defending from positions is Teekens, and in the braking zone I think might just defend just well enough. But we've seen many moves in the next section around Curva Grande. Let's see if we're going to see another one there. But lap 8, and it's Teekens who's leading the Grand Prix so far. Castian in P2, Weingarten in P3, Denson and Kriveld making a move on Notter, and Notter going all the way down to P12, but Weingarten still ahead of Vers Weinveren as he's still dropped a few tenths in the last few sections and is now about 4 tenths behind Weingarten so far. But at the moment, doing a pretty good job is Teekens, still stayed ahead of Castian as we're going to see a replay, and I think this is of Bas Notter. As you saw, these guys having many collisions as back into the pit lane he goes. So, not sure what's happened to his car, but Roy Castian ran on board with him into the Della Rogers chicane. But yeah, we'll see what happened to Notter. I'm not sure, he might just be in the pit lane. But yeah, interesting stuff. Maybe had damage, but we'll see where he comes out later on. As Franson got to keep an eye on him, he's stopped already and down in P13, but did have damage. So we'll see when the rest comes in. And we'll see what Franson's been able to do with the earlier pit stop. But Teekens still 2 tenths ahead of Castian, as Castian so far doing a pretty good job in the first 2 sections. Then in sector 3, obviously that is mainly just the Curva di Serigilo on the route down to the Ascari section. So that is where he gains in that bump drafting section. So that's where Weingarten might just want to close in and try and go for a move from P3. But we'll see these guys squabbling ahead in Parabolica as well. Bump trying to get in that slipstream, trying to get the optimal line, try and make a move. But into Parabolica, Teekens still just takes it so far. But we've got that long run down to the first chicane. Is going to the inside line. I think that was Weingarten who makes a move on Castian. As we ran on board with Kriveld after his incident earlier on. As, yeah, didn't do an idea. Well, I mean, it kind of ruined his chance for a good position in the top 7. But Kriveld demoted all the way down to P11 after that huge incident at the first section. But we ran on board with the front pack. Weingarten, he's going to go for the outside line. He's made himself up to P2 and now going around the outside of Teekens. Can he get into that race lead? Into turn number 1. He's still got that out inside line for the next corner. But on the outside, Teekens gets the grip, gets the traction and gets the exit to keep Weingarten at bay. But the long route round Curva Grande into the Della Roggia chicane. As who's going to fly through? Is it going to be Weingarten? Is it going to be Teekens? And who's going to be in the race lead? But in behind, you can see Castian getting a lovely tow there from Weingarten's car as he pulls out from that slipstream as he's going to the inside line into the Della Roggia chicane. And for the first time in this Grand Prix, Weingarten heads to the front and heads to the top of the pack and heads into that race lead. Goes a bit deep on the exit though, and Teekens in behind. As you see, that's a lot of damage on Heynen's car. He's still struggling P6 after that incident earlier on. We'll see when he comes into the pit lane. But Franson, he's the only man to pit from this front pack so far, but he did have damage. But Weingarten is doing a nice job so far in this race to make himself up to that race lead and still well and truly in this fight. Is all these guys down to P5, and you know, we'll never see what happens when the pit stops do occur. But lap 9 now in this heat as Weingarten leads it at the top as we head into the Ascari section. Teekens, Castian, Vers Weinveren, Prostema and Heynen, who's just lacking in the middle, a bit of no man's land, struggling to catch up behind after his incident earlier on. But Weingarten might be under a bit of pressure now from Tikans as Castian. I might be just too far behind to put the pressure on into Parabolica, but I'm sure we'll see him as we head into the Retifilo section. Once again, Tikans heading for the outside line. And can he try and make a move into Parabolica? Still side by side and goes flying around the outside. Very brave move from Tikans, but gets back into that race lead. Doesn't even give Weingarten a chance to lead a lap. But so far, it's still going side by side, 3 wide as we head onto the main straight. Once again, it's Weingarten who leads it, but Castian still opting around the outside line. And to the finish we go. Castian to Weingarten to Tikans. What a photo finish there. But what a result for Castian. He's led it so well as we look behind Denson, Kirkman, Kreuzen, Kreiveld coming across the line in that order as well. But Haynen did a good job as well with all that damage to stay in P6 and not get caught up from the cars behind. But that is the 20 minutes over, and that is Castian who wins it for the round 1. And what a race from him. Weingarten so close in the end, and look how close it is. Look at the margins in the bump draft. But in behind Jorge, Franson takes P13 after a disastrous race for him from pole position. Had to stop, and yeah, not ideal with that damage. But in behind, so got Witt, Wanton, Heino and Ardigo and Coel, who will round out the final positions. But what a race for Roy Castian, who takes it. Led most of the laps out here, kept out of all the trouble, and takes the checkered flag in P1. What a race from him. 3 wide to the line, and that is the drama there. But still, Haynen and Wanton still got to cross the line, as Franson is going to be a bit annoyed at how this race went for him. Got taken away from him at no fault for his own after a huge cruise in there. Witt takes the line. He sets his fastest lap of the race as well, and takes P14 along with it. Wanton, Heino, Ardigo, Coel still gets cross the line. Coel does a lap down. Not a great race from him, but still was involved in the instance early on. Sant and Bakker, the only drivers who was out and retired from the Grand Prix. But what a race, what a round 1, and the drama was all there. The incidents was all there. It was Monza at its prime, and with the bump drafting as well, that caused some huge drama. But what a race, and what battles we have just seen for round 1, and we've been treated to in the NXTGP round 1 race. As here we go, that beautiful track at Monza, historical track there. But take it to the line, it is Castian who takes that race win. What a battle, and I'm sure we'll have some even better battling next week. But as we head into Heat 2 as well, into the warm-up session there. But what a race from Castian so far, as that is perfect. Pitch perfect, stayed out of all the drama, all the battling, and yeah, keeps Weingarten at bay. But a few drivers there going to be kicking with the incidents, as yeah, few out of contention, but we've seen many incidents into the Retifilo section. But yeah, we're going to see it, I'm sure, plenty more again. But Castian going wanting to take that top spot once again as we head into the next heat once again. But yeah, what a race from him in Heat 1, as we're going to see some more battling soon enough. But NXTGP Heat 1 went to Roy Castian, who takes the top spot once again. And the 9th variation of this circuit since 2000, and it's maybe one of just the best, as it's As welcome back then to the reverse grid heat 2. Back at Monza once again, as here's the grid for you. As it's Kreuzen who's going to lead the way from pole position. It's Kirkman who's in P2 and Van Densen in P3. Melvin Twine in P4, then Cas Heinen in P5. Rick Prostema in P6. Jori Verswijnveren in P7. Milan Tikens in P8. And Luke van Wijngaarden in P9. Roy Castian, our race winner in that first race, in P10 for the reverse grid there. Pino Kriveld in P11, Jean Hore in P12, as in behind it is Connor Franson after a bad first race from him. From pole position, only grabs P3, and that's where perfect P13, that's where it starts today. Luke Luna DeWitt takes P14, Westel Wanton in P15, as it's Tiemann Haino in P16. Gabriel Adigo after a scrappy first race in P17, Bas Notter in P18, Yami Tan Weil in P19, Roel van Sant in P20, and Thomas Arbacher at the back of the pack in P21. But what can these drivers do in reverse positions? We're going to find out when the lights go green, as it's Kreuzen who leads the way from pole position in the reverse grid. As the lights go out and we are running full flat to the floor for Kreuzen. Has he got a good enough start to keep Kirkman at bay? I think he might just into the first section, as it's still more racing action. We've seen the most out of the first chicane. Any more carnage here this time around, but it's Kreuzen who leads the way after a fantastic start from him. 3/10 clears. Going down the inside is Denson on Kirkman. Got in behind his first Wijnveren on Prostema. We're right on body Wijngaarden, who's going side by side as well on Prostema, making another move. So Prostema, bit of a pull start from him, down 2 positions from P4. But Melvin Twine, he's also making some from P4, trying to make a move on Kirkman, and he's going round the outside at the Curva Grande. But in behind, still going side by side, is Castian and Tikens. Verswijnveren, he's making a move on Heinen, as well as we head into the De La Roja chicane. Still side by side. Wijngaarden trying to make up positions as well in P6, going round the outside. De La Roja chicane is still 2 ways side by side. This is crazy action once again at the De La Roja chicane. Is going off the track there. A few drivers behind. I think that was Witt and Franson. But still, look at the cars and look at the width the cars are going to try and make moves into Lesmo 1 and into Lesmo 2. Pino Kriveld right in the mix in P11, right side by side as Wanton making that move on Kriveld, going very, very wide, nearly off the track, as Rick Prostema still fighting all the way through as we head on the route to the Ascari section. But absolute action once again. It's a fantastic start from Kreuzen as well, but Denson is pulling in right behind in that slipstream, but still going side by side into the Ascari section. Look at the midfield pack fighting for any sort of points they can get. Franson, he's making a move on Kriveld, as it's, oh wow, crazy action once again is on the exit of the Ascari section. I think that's Franson and Kriveld. Yeah, they are side by side on the run down, as Witt also making a move on Franson. He's trying to go past not just Kriveld, but Franson as well, as round the outside. Witt makes a move as Franson dropping positions all the way to the back of the pack, as he's way back now, as he might have made a mistake. Oh, that's a big spin, as that's Kriveld way off the track. He already had that incident in the first heat, but now in the reverse grid race, sent spinning out Parabolica and spinning out of contention. Denson sets the fastest lap of the race on lap 1, and a fantastic first lap from him to get past Kreuzen. But I'm sure we're going to see another swap in that lead as we win that bump draft all the way down to the first section. But it's a huge spin for Kriveld, who's out of the Grand Prix and into turn number 1. He's still going side by side, but Denson with a fantastic line through there takes P1, as Kirkman and Wijngaarden fighting for P3, as it's Kirkman who comes out on top there. But here, right on board with Ardigo, who's looking for a much cleaner race than Heat 1, and qualifying was a bit scruffy for him as well, but he still just sat in P16, got overtaken by Franson into turn 1. But Kreuzen right in behind Denson, but Denson so far running fantastically out of the first chicane, as he's got a good line through there. But Twine going down the inside of not just one car, but 2 as well. Twine, can he try and make a move on Kreuzen with a switchback of dreams? It's a huge move for Melvin Twine, and that is perfect into the Lesmo corner. It's let Denson free, but Twine gets into P2. In behind, it's Kirkman and Verswijnveren once again side by side as we head into turn number 7. But Denson 1.5 clear. That is ideal for his race on lap number 2. 17 minutes on the clock, but it's Denson who leads the way, who started P2. But still, what a fight and what a move from Twine, who gets past the Delaroche chicane on the exit. Weingarten, he's making a move once again. Is he trying to make a move on Kirkman? He's going to have to be round the outside, though, if he wants to make it stick. But Luke van Weingarten wanted to make a move up to P4, down the inside, has just made it stick. Lovely move from him into the Ascari section, nice and clean, and keeps him right on the back of Croyson as he's trying to go for the inside line once again. Weingarten not holding back. We didn't see him hold back in Heat 1, but now in Heat 2, in the reverse grid, and going side by side. Weingarten making a move and letting Twine go as well. A gap a second to Twine, and from Twine to Denson, the gap 1.3 seconds. So Twine going to have a clean race from here to catch up to Denson and try and get that race in. But round the outside is Weingarten, braving it round the outside at Parabolica, and on the exit, put his foot flat to the floor as it's still going to go side by side as we head down to the first Retifilo chicane. But still, what a start from Denson. Can Twine close in? But it's a fastest lap. It's a 12:30. It's a 2 minute 13.7, and that's an ideal start to this second heat for Denson, who is now 1.1 seconds clear. Twine closing in ever so slowly. But Croyson, Heynen, he's making a move on Weingarten. He's still side by side into the first chicane one more time. Down the inside goes Weingarten. A very tight line over the curb. And still side by side, goes onto the gravel on the exit and has to stay behind Croyson. Postema sent crawling to the back of the pack. I'm not sure what happened to him, but it's well and truly out of contention of this race, and got to prove it next week. But Denson, Twine, we're going to see a replay here of Rick Prostema. Oh, he's sent spinning into the gravel trap. That is not ideal for a number 238 car. Sent well and truly out of the race. Rick Prostema, disaster for him in this second heat. Teekens making a move on Wanton, and Kirkman making his way up, but still side by side. Next, oh, that's a huge wobble there, and I think that was for Castian, our first heat winner. And in Heat 2, making a move down the inside at the second Lesmo. Sant also up there as well. He's still going side by side with Castian, still side by side into Lesmo 2. And who's going to come out on top? Teekens and Castian. We've seen that race, all race it wrong in Heat 1, but can never miss that car of Castian's as the Sesame Street-like livery. It's a stunning one to see. But currently in P9, in that bump draft, can he try and make it up more positions and get closer to that top 5? But Denson, that gap coming down ever so slightly, a few tenths on that last lap. Kirkman, he's trying to keep Vers Weinveren behind, gap about 3/10 of a second, but doing a good job to lead this second pack all the way through. And Heynen right on the back as well of Vers Weinveren in that number 18 car. But still, heading on to the back straight on the route down to Parabolica. Twine doing a decent job on this lap. Vers Weinveren getting through on Kirkman once again. It's still side by side. Kirkman dropping positions as getting ready for the straight. Probably wants to bump draft all the way through. Castian making moves. He's trying to get to the front of this pack as well. He goes to the inside line at Parabolica. He's now going round the outside of, I'm pretty sure that is Vers Weinveren on the outside of Parabolica. But it's a beautiful move from Castian, who's trying to make up positions, but Teekens also still side by side with him on the route down to turn number 1. It's Castian, it's Teekens, it's Heynen, it's Kirkman, all going side by side. Denson, the gap is now down to 4 attempts only. Twine's done a fantastic job to close in there, as Croyson and Weingarten so close to each other as well for that battle for P3. But this battle here is absolutely huge. Now going around the outside, I think it's going to be Weingarten who takes it, and into P4 so far. We've got 7 minutes on the clock already, and I tell you what, Denson has done a fantastic first chicane, as we've seen him do early on in this race so far. But this battle here is absolutely crazy as we head around Curva Grande one more time, as it's Castian who's at the top of this pack. Weingarten done a pretty decent job to close in on Croyson, but Castian climbing his way through the rank. Can he do anything and try and get further up in this race? But I tell you what, Croyson, he's also making a move on Weingarten and Twine as well, as Twine been sent to the back of that pack as well. But in the slipstream pulling out, that's Franson on Wanton as we head into Lesmo 1, as I think he's just made that one stick down the inside, got the better line there. As actually nearly hitting the barrier on the inside there. But Franson still takes it so far as we head into Lesmo 2, and on the exits, getting the power down. I'm going to try and set sail on Kirkman ahead. But Teekens also going for a move, as it's Castian and Twine who are going side by side, as in that slipstream is, look at all the cars, the big pack following in that bump drafting zone. But we're ran on board with Teekens one more time in P6, as in that slipstream, Teekens to Twine to Castian all the way down to P4. But Weingarten and Croyson getting away pretty decently but Twine must have made a mistake early on because he was quite close to Denson at the top. He was closing in. The guy was about 4 tenths, but must have made a mistake and now down in P5 battling with Teekens and in that slipstream all the way down to Parabolica. But here we go once again. Is he going to go for the outside line? I don't think he is this time around, but Milan Teekens still going to fight this one all the way down to the first chicane as it's side by side between Teekens and Twine. Once again, still side by side. Who's going to take this one in the slipstream of Twine as well? Of Castian, sorry, who's ahead of this pack. But still, look at him go into the first chicane. Weingarten sets the fastest lap of the race so far. It's a 12.687, and it's only 3 thousandths quicker than Kreuzen's time. But this battle at the front, around the body, Kreuzen and Weingarten and Castian all in the slipstream of each other. And in behind, we look back to the second pack, as it's going to be Castian who leads that one to Teekens, to Verswijver, to Twine, who's dropped positions in this race. He was battling for potentially race-winning territory, but now all the way down in P7 is in behind. As at the front, sorry, Weingarten and Kreuzen still battling with Denson. They have managed to close that gap as we head into the Della Roger chicane. Is anyone going to try and dive down the inside? I don't think the Yard of Denson going to be allowed another lap in that race lead, but Kreuzen and Weingarten are definitely knocking on that door. But Castian doing a pretty decent job as well in P4 to get himself ahead of Teekens, Verswijver, Twine, Kirkman and Franson, who's also joined that pack as well with Sant, Heinen, and the only man out of that is Wanton in P12. But Denson doing a pretty good job in that second split and actually 7 tenths clear. So done a pretty decent job to get ahead. There's in behind. I think that was Castian who went a bit wide on the exit of Lesmo 2 into the gravel trap. As that was far from ideal from him. But in the bump draft, once again going to close in his ears. Twine on Kirkman. Once again, side by side, I think that's Franson and Kirkman, sorry, into the Variante Ascari section. As down the inside, it's going to go Kirkman, still side by side with Ryan Boy Twine, as it's in behind him. And we've seen Kirkman just make that move on Franson as well, as it's a nice move from him. He's going to want to try and close in on Twine as well. But Denson, you can see him all the way out front, gap closing in on the route down to Parabolica once again. Still got 10 minutes to go, halfway through the race distance now in heat number 2 in the reverse grid race. As Denson doing a pretty decent job from P2 on the grid to lead it so far, and done oh so well to get up the top. But so far, we're going to see this huge fight all the way down to P6 as well. As Teekens and Castian also fighting side by side as well. We're going to see them surely scrapping for P4 later on as well. But Weingarten, Kreuzen still going side by side as well. Ranabody Sant as well, who's side by side with Kirkman, Franson. It's all going peaked on into turn number 1 as he's still side by side. At the moment, coming on top is Twine, but Heinen going round the outside as Sant also trying to make up positions and squabble his way through. As we go back to the top, it's Castian, Teekens, first Weinfren, then Twine. But then it's Franson, Heinen, Kirkman, Wanton and Sant all battling in behind. Denson doing a good job, but still drop that position to Weingarten, who's back in that provisional race lead, trying to get what was his in that first race. As can he get a win and a P2? Will be very good coming out of round 1. As Castian also doing a pretty decent job in P4 as well. Let's see what he can do in the next few moments. But as we head into the next Lesmo, putting pressure on his Teekens. But yeah, into the braking zone once again. See main drivers make mistakes here, and that might just cost a few of them if anything else happens. But not as many major incidents as the first heat, I'll tell you that for free. But I tell you what, it's still been very dramatic with the bump draft, the overtaking, especially down to the Ascari section into the first chicane as well. It's been all drama filled in both heats. And even in qualifying, we saw an absolute dream qualifying from a commentator's perspective. But Weingarten and Denson, they're getting close together at the top once again. Prostema and Sant going side by side again. We can see them into the Ascari section as Kirkman also getting nearly involved in that one as well. But Sant trying to go to the inside line, but still has to stay behind so far. But Prostema and Wanton both squabbling into the Ascari section. You can see the long run, that beautiful view of all the cars heading down to Parabolica. As it's Weingarten who leads the pack to Denson, who's led most of these laps so far. But still 13 minutes into this one, as it's Weingarten, then Denson, then Kreuzen, our provisional podium, and Castian, Teekens, Verswijver, Twine, all battling for P4. As that'll be their main battle, as I think the top 3 have shot off in that slipstream. Look at him go. as we head into the first chicane once again. The gap closing in even more, as this might just go 3 wide, as Kreuzen trying to go for the inside line as well, but it would have opt him in the wall. So Denson, Weingard and Kreuzen still going side by side. Denson to the inside line. He's surely going to take this one as well. He's had very nice lines through the first chicane so far, and also takes another very nice line. Denson got it nailed on through the first chicane, but round Curva Grande, Weingard obviously getting the better traction on the exit and the most optimal line for the exit, slowing fast out. As we'll see around Curva Grande, Higg closing up even more in that slipstream. Witt, Prostema, Coel also making moves as well. Sant, Wanton, Kriveld, Notter, all the way down to Kirkman, all making huge moves, and Kriveld up to P13, now Ardigo up to P10, but Castian, and you see his main pack here actually closing up together, as Castian being able to close in on Kreuzen a bit more on this lap, as there was fighting into that first section, but you can see the pack in behind as well. But this is a huge battle for the top 8, as we see Denson all the way down to Franson, who's struggling to keep on the back of this pack. See if he can close in on the next few straights. But Denson and Weingarten doing a pretty good job in P1 and P2. Denson done a fantastic job so far in the second heat, but can he keep it ahead of Weingarten when it matters? We've still got about 2.5 laps to go of racing action, and Denson, Weingarten, Kreuzen, Castian, Teekens, our top 5 so far. Stenson, can he get a win on the board in Heat 2 and in the reverse grid race? But we'll see. Weingarten has done a fantastic job overall in round 1. Nearly got the win in that first heat as well. So far, can he get the win at least in this second reverse grid race? We'll have to wait and see, as we've still got a few laps to go. But Roy Castian, he's done a pretty good job as well in P4 and keeping Teekens at bay as well. But Weingarten, is he going to try and move as we head on the exit Parabolica, about 2.5 tenths behind Denson? And I tell you what, Kreuzen right on the back as well. But we'll see these 3 battle once again. Can anybody else get involved as Weingarten already going to that inside line of Denson and Kreuzen? Castian, can he also try and get involved as well? But here we go once again, as Jory Vers Weinveren also watching this one as we run on board with him as we head on the route down to turn 1. Denson still in that race lead, Kreuzen in P2 and Castian in P3 now, as Weingarten also going to the inside line. Heavy on the brakes is Vers Weinveren, actually nearly making contact with Teekens ahead. But on the exit, it's Denson with another fantastic line through the first chicane and gets 5 tenths clear of the top runners. But that's into the gravel. I think that was for Roy Castian, as that has compromised his exit. As now getting through is Weingarten and Teekens also knocking on the door as we head around Curva Grande. But Denson, we've seen him in Sector 1 so strong in the first chicane. His line through there has been absolutely fantastic to gap the cars behind by a few tenths, especially when they're battling. It just keeps them behind, and he's done a fantastic job of getting every single bit of that advantage and staying ahead. But so far, Ardigo and Witt going side by side. You can see that right in the background at the De La Roja chicane, battling for P9, as Ardigo wants to get some at least something on the board, as he's in P9 after that shocking first heat for him. But Vers Weinveren getting past Weingarten, who's all the way down. He's actually in the gravel, pushed off the track by, I think that was Vers Weinveren as well, in P5 at Lesmo 2, going well off the track into the gravel once again. But Denson, he does such a fantastic job in the first few sections and is now 6 tenths clear, and that just might keep him and keep Kreuzen at bay, especially while Parabolica anyway. But Kreuzen under pressure from Castian, as that number 11 car going to fight that number 13 car, but when's going to pull out from that slipstream? We'll have to wait and see in a few moments' time. But still, the gap closing in, the gap about a tenth a second. Teekens and Vers Weinveren, as Vers Weinveren also trying to keep Weingarten at bay, but Weingarten being held up a bit on this lap, but got pushed wide at Lesmo 2 into the gravel, like we've seen so many times, not just in the race, not just in heat 1 or heat 2, but in qualifying as well. So many drivers going wide at Lesmo 2, and side by side can really affect through there. But taking that bit of a bump draft, it's Vers Weinveren on Weingarten as well. There's Denson at the top of the times once again, 2 tenths quicker on that last lap of Kreuzen, but Franson sets the fastest lap of the race so far, 12.390, as Teekens making a move on Castian as well down the outside line. He might actually try and make a move on Denson as well, but heavily into the braking zone. Denson Another fantastic line through the first chicane and takes that advantage as well. 6/10 of a second gained once again from Denson as the cars behind were just squabbling. Teekens, Castian and Croyson all going side by side. Verswijveren, he's making a move on Croyson as well. Round the outside at the Curva Grande once again in that slipstream and bump drafting once again. But it's Denson, then Castian, then Teekens as Castian making the move still side by side as the heading to the braking zone at the Delavorge chicane as it's Castian on Teekens who gets into P2 once again, but round the outside it is Teekens and he keeps Verswijveren at bay, but Weingarten in P5, Croyson in P6 and Twine out of this one at the back of that pack. But round the outside goes Weingarten. Can he make it stick around Lesmo 1 and now tries it on Verswijveren at Lesmo 2, but down the inside it's still Croyson who's still trying to make a move on Weingarten, but Weingarten still keeping him at bay. Very close between them, but Roy Castian so far in that slipstream of Denson, we've seen him closing ever so closely in the first two sections, and in this last section has been able to close in under 1/10 of a second to Denson at the top. Denson's really going to want to take this win as the clock about to strike 20, and it's going to be the final lap of racing action in a few moments' time. But Denson, Castian, Teekens, Weingarten, Verswijveren all still our top 5 as Croyson still knocking the door of Verswijveren as well. Can he try and make a move as Verswijveren also getting past Weingarten? It's still side by side as we head round Parabolica one more time. But Denson has led a fantastic race so far. Still under pressure from Teekens and Castian are still going side by side, but it's still the fact on who's going to take it. Is it going to be Denson? Is it going to be Castian? Or is it going to be Teekens? I think it's going to be Denson. It's going to go to the red car in the second heat. The reverse grid is going to go to the man who started on P2. What a race from Denson. Castian takes P2 and it's Teekens who takes the final place on that podium. Verswijveren takes P4. It's Franson in P5 and Croyson takes P6. Weingarten only P7, drop a few positions on that final lap. Twine takes P8. It's Ardigo who takes P9. Haynen takes P10. Kriveld crosses the line in P11. Coel in P12. Notter in P13. Sant in P14. Wanton takes P15 after no bonnet on his car. But then it's Kirkman, Witt, Heino and Prostema, Bakker and Hohore are all out and did not finish that race. But there we go then, the two heats are over, the reverse grid and the main race. But what a race from Denson there. Did a fantastic job. He was so quick through the first section as well, and that just allowed him to stay ahead. But there are your final results. As there weren't results there. We'll go on to the main in a few moments' time. But fantastic race from Denson, who takes the flag in P1 in the sprint. I always see these guys faffing about on the in-lap. Oh, a big collision there. But what a race from Denson, and he takes the second race win here in round 1. Great battle and fantastic around Monza.